Count Dracula is one of fiction's most enduring characters. Since the publication of Dracula in 1897, author Bram Stoker's blood-sucking creation has been portrayed in countless films, plays, TV and radio series, as well as magazines, prequels and sequels, and continues to be referenced and reimagined to this day. And while most of us know that Count Dracula is a vampire who requires regular infusions of blood to remain alive, there are many interesting details in Stoker's original text that modern depictions have missed. Let's begin with his appearance. In Chapter 2 of the novel, Jonathan Harker, the young lawyer who has travelled to Transylvania to help the Count purchase a house in London, describes his host as having strikingly pale skin and aristocratic features, mentioning that his face was a very strong aquiline, with a high bridge of the thin nose and peculiarly arched nostrils with lofty domed forehead. We also learn that he has pointed ears and squat hands with nails filed to a point, as well as sharp teeth protruding over red lips. Surprisingly, Harker also tells us that Dracula sports a heavy moustache, a detail almost never included in depictions of the character, as well as hairy palms, a subtle detail perhaps intended to enhance Dracula's animalistic, even bestial qualities. Harker also mentions that his eyes glow with a red light, particularly when he is upset or angry, and that he casts no reflection in a mirror. Indeed, he smashes Jonathan Harker's shaving mirror, denouncing it as a foul bauble of man's vanity. Next, let's discuss Dracula's powers. Apart from being a vampire and in some sense of the word immortal, since his physical body does not age, Dracula also has the ability to turn those he bites into vampires too, as seen by the tragic transformation of Lucy Westenra and Renfield, the mental patient. Interestingly, Dracula also exerts a form of mind control over his victims, with whom he not only communicates telepathically, but also subconsciously manipulates in their sleep, exerting a hypnotic effect on them that allows him to extend his sphere of influence beyond the purely physical. Secondly, despite his appearance of extreme pallor, Dracula possesses superhuman strength and agility. According to Van Helsing, Dracula possesses the strength of 20 men, and Harker is shocked when his host scales the steep walls of Castle Dracula head first, no mean feat considering the castle is set on a precipitous cliff more than 1,000 feet high. This surprising display prompts Harker to compare him to a lizard, adding a reptilian dimension to this already surreal character. In addition, Dracula can shapeshift into a variety of forms, including animals such as wolves and bats, and can even take more ethereal forms such as elemental dust and mist, allowing him to squeeze into cracks and crevices at will. He can also shrink and grow, appear and disappear. Dracula can also command all the meaner things, which in the context of the novel means nocturnal animals such as bats, rats, owls, moths, foxes and wolves, further cementing his animalistic qualities and connections to a primordial world with whom he enjoys a special affiliation. Van Helsing also states that Dracula can control, within reason, certain aspects of the weather, such as storms, fog and mist, another instance of his strange command of the natural world. However, Dracula is not without his weaknesses. His need for blood means he must constantly seek fresh supplies to rejuvenate him, and indeed this is the reason he seeks to relocate to London. Nor can he sleep where he wants. He can only sleep on home soil, which means he must ship boxes of Transylvanian earth to London in order to survive in what he hopes will be his new home. Furthermore, Dracula cannot enter a house without being invited first. Only after he has been granted permission can he cross a home's threshold, and despite his shape-shifting powers, Dracula is extremely vulnerable to sunlight, though unlike some modern portrayals, daylight is not instantly fatal to him, though it does weaken him considerably. This further limits his mobility, since he can only move around between the hours of sunset and sunrise, rendering the hours of daylight effectively useless. Another interesting limitation Dracula has to contend with is his inability to cross running water. He can only do so at the flood or slack of tide, demonstrating that despite his formidable powers, Dracula cannot control everything. Lastly, in common with all vampires, Dracula is repelled by sacred Christian items such as holy water and crucifixes, a mainstay of vampire folklore long before the publication of Stoker's novel, which helped to cement this legend further. Furthermore, Dracula is repelled by garlic, and a wild rose laid on his coffin prevents him from leaving it. Finally, Dracula can be killed by a sacred bullet fired into his coffin, or driving a wooden stake through his heart and cutting off his head. Combined with the determination of the men arrayed against him, these vulnerabilities ultimately lead to Dracula's demise at the end of the novel. Perhaps Stoker felt that his villain could not be omnipotent. As the novel's numerous Christian references make clear, the battle between Dracula and Van Helsing's men symbolizes the struggle between the forces of good and evil, of God and the devil. Or perhaps Stoker wanted to create a more complex character in Dracula, rather than reducing him to mere caricature. What surprised you most about Dracula in this video? Let me know in the comments down below, and follow the channel to be updated when I upload more content on Gothic literature and more.